Good evening. I'd like to call the February 4th, 2020 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order. Can we all please stand for the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't have any announcements this evening. Is there anyone here for anything that is not currently on our agenda? And seeing as none, I will go directly into item 1. And actually, can I bounce around on the agenda a little bit?
The poll petition is a hearing,
So I can't
so you can.
bounce around. All right, so it's a hearing for poll petitions 290-47660 for Walnut Street, 290-47660 for Arch Street, and 259-309-59 for Wallem Lake Road, and possible votes. I have to read each one of these, don't I?
I tabbed you, so you make it a little bit easier.
All right, thank you. So the Massachusetts Electric Company and Verizon New England, Inc. request permission to erect and maintain poles and wires to be placed thereon together with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as said companies may deem necessary to be owned and used in common by your petitioners in the following way or ways. Walnut Street, installing 2 poles on Walnut Street, P50 and P6-84. So should I just do all 3 of them at once?
I would, yeah.
All right. This is the next one, I believe. Yes. It is hereby ordered that Massachusetts Electric Company and Verizon New England be and hereby granted joint or identical locations for permission to erect and maintain pole wires to be placed thereon together and with such sustaining and protecting fixtures as said companies may deem necessary on the public way herein referred to as requested in petition said companies dated the 20th day of November 2019. And this is for plan number 290-47660. I don't see the address on this one.
I think this is the Arch Street one. It's on the previous page.
Oh. All right. Am I missing a page on this? Because there should be one more. Oh, there's Walnut Street, P50. Already have that
You
one.
should have had 3 tabs.
It does.
Oh, okay. There you go.
You had a Chromebook.
That will never happen on my watch. And then the other one is, oh, that's the Arch Street one that I just did.
Probably the last one.
And the last one is for Massachusetts Electric and Verizon New England, request permission to relocate poles, wires, cables, and fixtures, including anchors, guys, and other such necessary sustaining and protecting fixtures along and across the following public way or ways. Wallem Lake Road, and they're going to install 7 poles on Wallem Lake Road and relocate 4 poles on Wallem Lake Road, beginning at a point approximately 150 feet south of the center line of the intersection of Wallem Lake and Walnut Street, and continue approximately 2,800 feet south.
All right, just so you're aware, there was one other poll petition that was submitted. Conservation said that there were conservation issues, so they needed to go before the Conservation Board first. So that's not on your agenda.
Okay.
Everyone has been, all abutters, that is, have been notified of the hearing.
Excellent.
And we have 2 people here. Yeah,
Come on up.
come on.
You both can?
Sit.
You guys both from Grid or Verizon or both?
Thomas Capobianco, I'm from National Grid.
James LaFerry, I'm a consultant from National Grid.
Okay. And we have a bunch of new poles going in.
Yes, we do.
So I'm assuming just replacement, upgrades?
Essentially, the distance between the poles was inadequate for the upgrades that we were doing. This is all related to a DG solar site that's going in, and these are just minimum distances that we we have to upkeep, which is why we're putting some new poles.
Okay.
The Amp Solar sign on Lake Road.
I don't really have it. These are so straightforward, it's almost like we should rubber stamp them.
Could rubber stamp ourselves out of
Except,
existence.
Except this is a public hearing. And
yes,
to see
you
if
have
there's
to
any
allow the
comment.
public to
Yes.
come.
Does anyone have any comment or objection to said poll petitions aforementioned? Seeing as none.
I'll move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody have a motion to approve said poll petition?
So moved.
Second.
All right, motion again's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We totally could rubber stamp that.
No.
You just like to take away everyone's fun, Suzanne.
Having them is fun.
Second item is the Police Department accreditation, and to meet the Canine Finn, their comfort and therapy dog. Finn doesn't want to meet us.
He's outside of normal working hours, so it's a little...
Is there overtime involved?
Yeah.
Tell them to file a grievance.
Yeah. He may. So this is Finn. Finn's going to be 12 weeks on Friday. He's an English Labrador Retriever that was donated to the department by Bloomfield Labradors out of Ridge, New Hampshire. They've also donated a Labrador to the state police, Lunenburg Police, and the Westminster Police, I believe. And he's been a great addition so far. He goes home with Officer Filoni here. He's going to be his main handler, and he's made numerous trips up to the school and throughout the community. So I think he's going to be a great asset internally and externally for us. As he grows, we're going to get him trained, and he'll be a certified therapy/comfort dog. This is the famous Finn.
The famous Finn.
How's the housebreaking going?
It's going pretty good.
Yeah, he's actually doing pretty good. He'll be 12 weeks on Friday, 12 weeks old. So he's getting to the point where when he needs to go out, he'll sit by the back door.
That's
He's
great.
even doing that downstairs here in the
That's
station. So he's getting better.
He's got a lot of followers.
I saw that. Was he a Twitter now?
Instagram. Twitter a little bit too. Mostly Instagram, Facebook, a little Twitter here and there, but he's, what do they call him? A influencer.
Yeah.
Instagram influencer.
Should have them at our meetings here.
We should.
We should.
We need the therapy part.
Yeah,
We could.
Yeah.
during and after.
In addition to comfort, he'll be doing some police work at some point? or-
Well, he'll be doing community policing. He'll
Yeah.
be used for community outreach, so he won't be doing any actual law enforcement police
Okay.
work, no narcotics or no sniffing or anything like
Okay.
that, no patrol work, but he'll be out there in the community and basically used for community outreach.
He looks like he's a little sleepy.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's getting that video at that time.
he's usually good for an hour awake, 2 hours on that rotation, on that schedule.
On and off,
Yeah.
right, no middle ground.
Right. And he's really good at going down right before meetings or appearances. You know, he's
Yeah.
up and at 'em, and then usually 10 minutes before he's supposed to be ready to go, he likes to hide under someone's desk and take a nap, and then you gotta wake him up. But he's coming along.
Yeah. Well,
We're in the biting stage, I see.
oh, yeah.
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 What's his role at the school? What will that be?
Just to, well, for now, our visits to the schools have been socialization visits. So I'll go in, and I've had situations already where I'll go into the high school where the kids are a little older, and everybody comes running up to them, and they want to be the first one to grab his leash and, take him down the hall. So he's going in, he's visiting. A big part of getting them socialized is with the younger kids, and we get this from the kennel owners, was to have people tug on his ears, tug on his tail, just kind of, be all around him, so that if he were ever to experience that for the first time, you want it to happen now, not when he's a year or two old, and he reacts to it, in a bad way, so, in a negative way. So he's been at all the schools, had him at Riddlebrook, and, the feedback so far has been unbelievable. Kids love seeing him. You know, when I don't have him, they're wondering where he is, and so it's been really, really good. Even from the school administrators, you know, Kevin Means went out of his way to put some language together.
Good.
I think I'd question anybody that had a negative reaction to the dog.
Yeah, well, and I think we understand, you know, some people just aren't into dogs. You know, I understand that, so we have to respect that as well, but so far it's been all positive.
Good.
It makes you more approachable, too.
Absolutely, yeah, we've seen that just in the first few weeks that we've
Yeah.
had them. So that's a
Especially the younger kids, when you go up to the beginning ages, you know, they see the dog and they just light up, they love it. So it's a good icebreaker, and,
There you go. That's all you wanted.
yeah.
He just wants a seat at the table,
Yeah,
that's all.
front and center.
Maybe we can get a Dalmatian for the fire department.
No.
So, in addition to introducing Finn, I just wanted to touch on our accreditation. As of today, we're officially certified through the Massachusetts Police Accreditation Commission. We went to the meeting today and we were awarded our plaque and our official letter, which I'll give to Mr. Wojcik and Suzanne for her notes. So being certified is the first step in the accreditation process, the first official step. The first step is self-assessment, where we go through all our policies. We get to the point where we think we're ready to go, and we get assessed for certification. So being certified means we have met 159 of the 326 standards it takes. So certification is the first step, we're there. We have completed the remaining 167, and we're ready to go for our accreditation assessment.
Yep.
So our accreditation assessment is going to be March 3rd and March 4th. I don't anticipate any problems with that. We're right where we need to be. We already had our mock. It's just a matter of having them come in, do the official assessment, and if all goes as planned, we should receive our full accreditation in June at the June meeting. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. I'll give you a letter as part of our accreditation assessment. I need to notify the board in writing, so you have that, and that's also in this with our letter. But it's been, you know, 2 years of solid work, redoing policies, procedures, making some adjustments to the building, to some of the rooms downstairs, but Sergeant Aaron McLaughlin, who's the accreditation manager, has done an outstanding job. He's very organized and diligent, and actually, Officer Filoni is the assistant accreditation manager, so they have both done yeoman's work on this project, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost there, so I will keep you updated as time goes on. But like I said, I don't anticipate any problems, and I'll give you another update after the 4th.
Excellent.
Nice work, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Extra treats for Finn.
Yes.
You can leave the dog.
Yeah, he can stay.
Right. We have a seat next to him. Right there. Little bowl of water.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
That case.
All right, so we have the special employee designation under Mass General Law 268A, Senior Tax Workoff Volunteers, and possible votes.
We'll want that back because we're going to want to post that on the website. We're just looking over the certification letter.
All right. It's just we have to designate them as special town employees,
Yeah.
right?
The board has encountered this issue before. The ethics code that we all follow prevents people from having more than one relationship with the town, especially if one of them or both of them is for some sort of remuneration or consideration. So, being a small town, the members of the Board of Selectmen are all special employees. You may have other relationships with the town, provided you disclose it. So, a member of the board could drive a snowplow for a highway, for instance, and be compensated for that extra time, provided that the relationship, the multiple relationships are disclosed. That necessity to acknowledge that relationship and to disclose it has arisen with our senior tax work-off people. When they come into town hall and work for us, they are not really volunteers. they are receiving consideration for the time that they spend working in town hall. That's an abatement on their taxes, on their property taxes. So there is a financial consideration. To the extent that any of our senior work-off people are either members of boards and commissions or employees of the town in another context, this creates the need to designate some portion of their relationship with the town as special employees. We don't really want to do that in a sweeping fashion for all of our boards and commissions. It really, that kind of opens the door to almost undermining the purpose of the statute. But the special, the senior work-off group is a distinct group. They are a certain amount of flexibility where we can put them in so they can earn the benefit that they're seeking to have under the program. And it's just one class of employees. It's a special, not special, senior tax work-off people. So the logical progression that I think we need to follow is to, the recommendation is that the board would designate senior tax work-off people special employees. The finance director and I would seek, through the payroll records, to document everybody with a disclosure of conflict, technical conflict. And then, to the extent that they're special employees and their conflict doesn't rise to the level of requiring Board of Selectmen authorization, they're good to go. They're all set. They're fine. There are going to be a couple who, because they are engaged on a board or commission and they are working their senior tax work-off time in the same department, basically doing work for the group that they sit on, that would require a special authorization from the Board of Selectmen. So that would be step 2. That would be a second round of votes at your next meeting, where we've identified, I think, maybe 3 people now are either on a board or commission and working in the senior program. I know of at least 2, but I think there's a third one. Actually, it is a third one that came up today. So that's where we stand with it. I just think it's good to keep everybody completely above board and copacetic, and everybody's nose is clean, and we know where nobody can say, oh, were you aware of this and you let it happen? Of course we were aware of it, and they were authorized to do it because they met the statute's requirements. And it's a fair thing to do for people who, on boards and commissions, are volunteering their time.
So is there anything that we need to vote on tonight on this, or is this just an...
Yes, so the motion would be to designate senior tax work-off people as special town employees for purposes of the act.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made and seconded.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear who said the second. Was it Hal?
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, so we have MVP presentation by Peter Peloquin and CMRPC Associate Planner, or the CMRPC Associate Planner.
Tim?
My colleague.
Your peeps right there. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Select Board. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm here as part, I was here the previous hour from 6 to 7 and had a public listening session as part of this MVP program that we're going to talk about tonight. I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can, but I want to be as thorough as possible too. It's kind of a lengthy process, right? The program is a state-run grant program. The town was awarded the grant back in July 1. We put together a core team that consists of Bill Cundiff, he was the core team leader. There's also town manager, FD chief, DPW, highway, water. There was a group of 6 of us that met 4 times over the course of 4 months to put this one-day workshop together, which is a climate resiliency style workshop. This listening session is coming after that as part of the grant program. We also want to get public feedback. So anybody that's at home that didn't see the public listening session, I suggest you watch it. Provide us with some comments along with the Selectmen's presentation. So with that being said, I'll try to get us all on the same page. So I kind of touched on some of these things. What I left out was that it's a two-part process, right? The first part is you apply for an MVP planning grant. That's the process that the town of Douglas is in right now. The planning process is to hold that workshop, have a listening session, put a report together, submit that to the state, then the town of Douglas will become an MVP certified town or community. With that certification, that allows the town to apply for what's called an action grant or an MVP action grant. And that's where, in a perfect world, the ideas that came out of the workshop would then be funded through the state program. That covers most of that. Sorry, I just have some note pages here. I just don't want to get lost. This is a map of the state and which communities are certified or are currently going through the certification process. I do want to note that this is the most up-to-date map that they have from September, but there has since been another round of applications, and all those announcements are going to come out tomorrow, so this map is essentially obsolete tomorrow. As you can see, the light blue is a designated community. The dark blue is who is going through that process right now. And we kind of think about, the reason I want to show you this is in the future we'll talk about a little bit more about the action side and the monies that's involved there in regional partners. So kind of think about who surrounding the community is certified. Who can we work with to apply for a joint grant or regional grant application? Touched on some of this already, but community-driven process, that's kind of the idea of that whole core team gets assembled, right, by kind of community leaders or department heads, or who has a large reach into the community to bring in people to that workshop. The workshop was held on November 20th. It was invitation only, right? So the town, in those core meetings, we decided, the town or the group kind of came up with who do we want to see at this meeting? Who do we want to invite? Who do we want to bring in? What's the most diverse group of people we can get in this room to have this kind of one-day think tank workshop? 24 attendees attended. That was partly municipal. It was also private business owners, contractors, members from DCR, Senior Center. There was other members from CMRPC as well. So there's a lot of different players in the room who don't typically often get in the same room together for that amount of time. So the objectives of the workshop, we identified the extreme weather and climate-related hazards, the top 4 that impact Douglas the most. We identified current and future vulnerabilities and strengths. We developed and prioritized actions for the community to develop and move forward when it comes time for those action grants. And we identified opportunities for the community to advance and reduce the risks around climate resiliency, right? So thinking futuristically, what could happen potentially in 50 years or so from now. We worked in, this is a little bit different. So the way it kind of worked is we broke out into groups. We had 4 tables of 5 to 6 individuals, right? At the tables, we worked within 3 focus sections, which were infrastructure, society, and environment. We also developed refined, I should say, those 4 focus hazards that we came up with as a core team. The hazards were drought, flooding, wildfire, winter storms, and wind events. So drought and wildfire kind of went hand in hand. I apologize for that. The tools that we have is that matrix. Maybe you can see off to the side here. That is what came out of Douglas' workshop. That's just one piece from one table. So we had that. We had maps of the town, a large table map that's behind those yellow papers. Those are summaries, markers, maps, crayons, all kinds of things to draw on the maps, write down our ideas. We had notepads to hash things out before we put pen to paper, and also each other. Right, so everybody from the community was pitching in some way, shape, or form. I shouldn't say everybody, but everyone in attendance was pitching in some way, shape, or form. So like I said, those 3 topics were the infrastructure, society, environment. You can see a picture there. We used this room to host that workshop. So thank you for allowing us for us to use that space. Once again, the top 4 hazards was drought, wildfire, kind of goes together. Flooding was another one. Wind events. I'll just kind of throw it out there. I don't think I've said it yet today. When we think wind events, we can think in multiple different ways, right? We can think of roughly a year ago, that February windstorm where it's sunny, partly cloudy, but it's blowing like 70 miles an hour at times. We can also think of wind events as the tornado, which affected Douglas roughly last summer, right? Spring, summer. Yeah, we can also think nor'easter. Right? We can have nor'easter with rain, not just a nor'easter with snow, and hurricanes too. So it's thinking, when we were thinking of that hazard, we were thinking, what is the effect of the wind versus the rain, right? The rain went into the flood, kind of split it up that way. So just kind of a brief rundown of how we went through the matrix, right? When we broke out into those groups, roughly 5 to 8 people. We had scribes, we had members of CMRPC and plus core team. We identified those hazards, put them down there, and then we kind of went through, and I think if we're looking at it, it's going to be on the left side, right? That was the left, or the first 2 hours of the morning. No, throw a lot at you all at once. But we're thinking about, what do we have infrastructure, Douglas as a town? We have societal features, right? Thinking of the senior center. Environmental concerns, right? Environmental runoff, that came up. And some of these other 3 columns, the location, ownership, and vulnerability or strength, those places kind of got a little fishy a few times, right? Location isn't always just an address. It's not just 123 Main Street. It could be, when we're thinking of runoff pollution, it could be an area or a part of town that's on septic tanks, right? Where is that water going? Because now that area becomes bigger. Is it going right into a pond? Is it going into a stream that then goes into a pond? And then what's in the water now creates, a thriving weed system in the water, which then creates all kinds of other problems. So the location was kind of a wrench in a lot of things. Ownership is also another thing. It's not just as easy as this is a public building owned by the public, right? It could be a public-private partnership. It could be a state, like for example in Douglas, a third of the town is state-owned, right? That presents challenges when it comes to certain things. We also thought about vulnerabilities and strengths. The vulnerability and strength, I like to think of a coin, right? There's 2 sides of a coin, and then there's what's in between those 2 sides. So that plays a role in all of these things too, right? Because in one place, like a septic system, that's a great thing to have, right? On the other side, what's happening to everything that's coming out of those leach fields, right? So that's where that vulnerability and strength come hand in hand, or create that coin, and then it's trying to figure out what's in the middle. So that was the morning, roughly 4 hours. The afternoon, that was about another 3.5 hours. We were here for almost 8 hours in total, minus lunch. So the right side was kind of completed. That's what we've kind of hashed everything out. That was all, what do we have? Where is it? Break, trying to pull out all the problems, possibilities. The afternoon was kind of identifying, what can we do about this, right? What is a realistic thing? What is an imaginary, if there were no rules kind of scenario? We prioritized all those actions, and then we came up with kind of a rough timeline, right? So we came up, the guidelines are short, long, or ongoing, right? So thinking kind of less than 2 years we'll consider short, over 2 years we'll consider long, ongoing might just be kind of business as usual and make sure we're staying up to date with everything. And I know what everybody's kind of, what we want to know is what came out of all of this. So the table summaries, each table, as we broke out into groups, then reported back to the larger group. And as those reports and those summaries came out, we could start to see trends, right? Maybe North Street got mentioned, maybe the bridge, maybe the river, right? An apartment complex near it. There started to be trending in areas in watersheds and river systems. That's actually, those yellow papers over there is what was reported out. After all that was done, we took a vote as a group. So this back wall here was plastered, essentially wallpapered with all these matrix, and everyone was allowed to vote, right? We were all given an equal amount of votes, voted for the projects that we thought were, whatever they thought, that individual. It was their highest priority, it was their favorite project, it was the most encompassing, right? And that kind of helped us too to start to refine the search of what the community wants too, right? So we have some kind of consensus when we go to the action grant side. So what did the group find? Like I was saying, you can kind of see in the back there, that's how much information was cast throughout the day. When we think about if you wrote on that back wall, that's a lot of thoughts, right? There's a lot of processes there. There's a lot of things hashed out. Maybe some will never come to fruition, maybe some will. So I'll kind of break this out the same way. We'll go through infrastructure, society, environmental. I'm just going to try to catch myself up here on the notes. I apologize. So some of the infrastructure concerns that came out were some not so surprising, some a little bit thought-provoking. Culverts and bridges, kind of town-wide. The water services was brought up. Tree management, dams, the municipal facilities, stormwater management. Those are kind of the bigger topics that were discussed, right, broadly. We're thinking about the culverts and bridges. A lot was talked about Whitten Reservoir, Wallace Street, the North Street Bridge, the Mumford River is part of it, and Mechanic Street Bridge. Those are kind of the hard infrastructure things that were brought up time and time again in multiple fashions. Water, limited coverage and aging infrastructure was kind of the concern on that end. We were thinking water services. Trees, we were thinking kind of street trees, right, and tree maintenance. So two similar products but different, right? Street trees are going to cause all kinds of problems if they fall. 100-year-old tree starting to decay, now it falls, it takes out a power line, it blocks, say for example, Route 16, now we have traffic problems, all kinds of things happen there. And then we were thinking of tree maintenance, it was sort of, what are we going to do about creating a healthy environment for this tree, right? Pruning, things like that. When we plant new trees, we don't plant them a foot off the road or in the middle of the sidewalk, right? Kind of thinking ahead in a maintenance fashion, preventative maintenance fashion, I should say. Some of the strengths, so once again, municipal buildings got brought up, right? That's kind of that other side of that coin, and then what's in the middle. Public safety, public water system, and DPW, so kind of a lot of public things, infrastructure we brought up as strengths, right? When we think of the municipal buildings as maybe an aging infrastructure, it also provides services, right? Public safety, have full-time fire department, full-time police department, just got introduced to the new dog Finn, right? All these great strengths, but we can also think, even in the public safety realm, right? We have DPWs, highways, and water departments, right? We're all playing a role in public safety, making sure we have clean drinking water, making sure that we have sanitary services. When the tree does fall, someone can remove it, right, and lessen those impacts. So public safety kind of is the bigger umbrella of just, badges and uniforms that we're used to seeing. It's that fluorescent yellow. So those are brought up as strengths a lot. I think I hit everything there. So some of the actions that came out of it, granted, keep in mind that there was more of a range of priorities and actionable items that could potentially happen, right? So when we think about the action grant process in the future, that would be the time to polish that, as well as in the time of drafting everything up, right? So it's kind of the conversation started at the workshop, and now we're going to try to polish that rock moving forward, and then really polish it when the action grant cycle comes to actually, make change. So some of the higher priority actions were the culverts and the catch basin upgrades. It's kind of town-wide. The North Street Bridge was talked about and revamping that. It also kind of spread to not just the bridge, but what's surrounding that, right? So we have the Mumford River, we have the apartment complex, aging populations over there, right? Maybe we can throw in some ADA things or complete streets. Right, so it might not just be that this one MVP action grant is the end-all be-all, but there's all kinds of other things that we can pull and pool together and combine kind of, I don't know, I guess the larger grant process or the larger pool of money. The water provisions was talked about in ways of like potable water and emergency waters, right? So if we're thinking of projected climate changes in hotter and longer summers, what's that going to do to the well systems, right? We're pulling off town wells, private wells. What are we going to do about that? How are we going to solve those problems? Can we connect the larger audience of Douglas to the public water system? And then same, on the flip side was kind of the emergency water, right? Thinking dry hydrants, cisterns, fire ponds. And this kind of goes back to what I was just saying, where if we have a fire pond, this action grant probably won't cover a fire pond because they don't cover hard infrastructure, right? Unless it falls in line with the core principles, which is green infrastructure. So when we think of a fire pond, now we kind of think of what else could go there, right? Is it a fire pond that becomes a new ecosystem, right? Where it's a frog pond with lilies and, the geese can rest there, something like that, right? Maybe there's a trail that goes around it that's for healthy aging, dementia friendly. It's ADA compliant, right? So now we're getting we're getting a different group of people in there. We can throw some educational signs and benches. Now it becomes a little bit more of a learning and family atmosphere. But, it can serve as a fire pond, right? So instead of just digging a hole and fill it with water, we make it a little bit more interactive. So kind of thinking broadly and wide there. The electrical grid, making sure we're keeping up with that infrastructure, right? Keeping everything with National Grid, those relationships well, always building them, and also thinking about what is our impact on the grid as a town, as a municipality, as a private individual, right? How can we lessen our impacts when that grid potentially could become overloaded if it's not developed as time goes on. Some societal concerns. I thought this was, I want to applaud Douglas on this because there was a lot of really cool things that came out of this. But kind of when we're thinking of the concerns, we're thinking of senior residents, flood-prone neighborhoods, community preparedness, those insect-borne diseases and their effects. Kind of the Riddlebrook apartment area, the Hayward Landing area, College Colonial, Wallam Lake Terrace, right? Those are some neighborhoods that got brought up. Maybe for an older population, or renter population, or septic population, right? So kind of think about where are those pieces, right, of the population. This is just a kind of a quick reference, right? When we break Douglas out to the 4 census block groups, on your left you'll see the percentage of renters. That's roughly the darker green area is roughly 33 to 50% of the population living within that color is a renter. On the right-hand side is over 65, and that's between like 9 and 13 of the percentage of the population within that census block group. So just kind of thinking of that societal thing, right? Who's, where, and how. We're just kind of thinking if we put those two together, we potentially have, a section of town that's aging and renting, right? So what are the challenges that come with that? So that was discussed a lot too during the day. Excuse me. So the other side of the coin is the strengths, right? The community was a strength. Community as a whole at Douglas was a strength, as well as some of those islands, right? Emergency shelters was a strength. Public safety was a strength. That's including DPW and all those other services. The Adult Social Center, that was another strength in the Jenks store, right? Provide some historical relevance in a place to gather. We're kind of thinking about these societal features, who's where, who's not where, kind of hashing all of that out. Some of the, kind of the overarching high priority item was that vulnerable population. When I say that word, I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying that vulnerable population might be aging, it might be youth, it might be a language barrier, it might be an income barrier, right? There's all kinds of different ways to think about that. But kind of the 3 big things were outreach, engagement, participation. And I think this is really, really cool. Like, it's a really good concept. Cool is not a good word, I apologize for that, but when we're thinking of outreach, it's like we posted the meeting, right? You find it, you come to us. Where engagement is how do we go to the place? How do we have that conversation outside of just the typical meeting room? And that's not a shot at the selectmen at all. That's not what I'm saying. But that's in general, right? Maybe the aging population, it's hard for them to get to the public meeting or to the police station or to the youth group, whatever the case may be. Maybe we bring those groups to the senior center, right? How do we connect the youth with the police? Finn is a perfect example of that, right? That's that icebreaker. That's that engagement. And then participation. This is kind of on both sides, right? Going back to the residents of Douglas too. There's a part of the residents to participate in the process too, right? So that would be providing comments to the listening session. That would also be, how do I participate with the senior center? How do I participate with the youth? Along with spiritual and religious institutions, right? Same thing, it was kind of the same topics there, outreach, engagement, participation. How do we pull them in? What services can we provide to them? And the flip side, what services can they provide to us? Who can they engage with that maybe we as a town can't so easily, right? So there's that whole cycle, or a triangle, if you will. The other side of that societal aspect, which I thought was really interesting, was the insect-borne disease, right? So thinking back over the summer, we had EEE, had to deal with all that, and then the programs were getting closed, right? Nobody can go to the park after sunset or 4 or 6 or whatever the town came up with. I don't want to speak out of turn there. So then it's I can speak for my kids. They couldn't play baseball in the town that we live in, and they were not happy about it, right? So kind of thinking, what was the societal effect of that, right? It's posting notices, it's staying up to date, it's signboards, right? It's kind of the we need to get the information out there, but then thinking about what did we lose, right? Essentially all outdoor activities. And then the thought process behind that was, well, what are we going to do about that? Because if it's projected to have longer, hotter summers, maybe they'll be drier. Maybe this EEE is a cycle. Maybe it comes and goes every 10, 5, 20 years, whatever the case may be. But maybe in the future that it's just here, and we have to find ways to deal with it. Whether that's the case or not, I don't know. I'm not the scientist. But what we did identify was that there's no places for it, or there's limited places for indoor recreation, right? I don't think we're going to Douglas is going to build an indoor ballpark. I don't think that's going to happen where we can have football, soccer, cheerleading practice, you name it, whatever happens outside. But maybe there's ways that the gym in the community center can have a batting cage, right? Or maybe there's an indoor wiffle ball league. Like we don't have Little League, but we have wiffle ball. Maybe there's, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but there's like a barefoot hockey tournament league, something, I don't know. Something where the kids can still be active, can get that recreational piece, can get that social engagement and everything that goes along with those building blocks of the youth, right? So the ideas like that were coming out, right? And even thinking back to the fire pond, how do we take something simple as we don't have a place to play outside to build that into a bigger thing, right? That would come, the core of it's EEE, but everything on the outside is all kinds of other things, right? Age-friendly, ADA, complete streets, recreation, all those things. Some of the environmental concerns, once again, insect-borne disease, there's the other side of the coin, or that piece in the middle. Runoff pollution, brownfields, forest maintenance, nuisance species. So when you're thinking of insect-borne disease, kind of, I guess it should be kind of insect/borne diseases. Thinking of EEE, Lyme disease, we're also thinking invasive species, right? So the moss, the Asian longhorn, I'm trying to blank on the name, but it's the borer one, right? All those things. Longhorn beetle just came back in Auburn, right? So it's always kind of being awareness there. Forest maintenance kind of goes back to the tree thing, but on a larger scale. We have street trees that we need to maintain, but also the forest, right? Thinking longer, drier, hotter summers. Now we're thinking debris management, wildfire concerns, right? If trees are dying, they're falling. Who's cleaning them up? If we're not maintaining the forest floor, what's happening to it? Is it changing? Is it now host these invasive species? Is it host to nuisance species like beavers, right? And the runoff pollution too, that was another big one. Kind of thought about it in different ways, right? I thought about neighborhoods, solar farms, brown fields, and a hot topic was the septic systems, right? So what's running from the neighborhood to where? It's going down the street to where? What are we doing with it, right? I think in terms of that. Solar farms. If we cut down the trees, put in a solar farm, now we lost that whole root system. What's happening to everything when we have these higher intense rainstorms and washing everything off? Is the debris ending up in the road? Is it clogging the stormwater system? What's happening there, right? So that kind of runoff. Along with septic, kind of brownfield runoff. Wallem Lake Terrace got brought up, not to pick on them, but to point it out. You have a hill with all septic systems that leads right to the pond. So is there education piece that can be brought up there? Is there some kind of stipend or maintenance program? Is there a way the town can assist with the septic upkeep and maintenance, right? So things don't get worse. Is there ways to connect the town, or that neighborhood to the town's sewer system to essentially, I don't want to say completely eradicate the problem, but to definitely lessen the impacts? So those are kind of the umbrella, if you will, the summary of the discussion. Environmental strengths. We're thinking forested land, water resources, and open space. They kind of all go hand in hand, right? So when we're thinking the forest as a strength, we're thinking it's a place of recreation, it's a place for habitat, wildlife habitat, ecosystems, even things that happen underground, right? The root systems, how they connect, how they talk to each other, all the funguses that grow and decay and kind of naturally maintain the forest, if you will. The water resources, the nice side of that is plenty of places for recreation, fishing, swimming, cooling off during a hot time. Ecosystems, once again, places for fish to eat hopefully, bugs, eat the bugs, maintain that naturally. And then thinking about open space as a whole, right? All of those things combined. The recreation fields, the forest, the water, the brooks, the streams, the ecosystems, the farmlands. Some of the actions that came out of there kind of, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but kind of, right? Investigate the bylaws. What do we have on the books? What can we do about septic runoffs? What can we do about fertilizer use? Is there a big enough impact of fertilizer uses in the towns that we can do something about it? Open space and rec plan, that's something that the town wants to update, right? When I'm thinking about update that and bring it back to the modern times, it's not that out of date, but it's slightly out of date, right? Thinking about all those things, and brownfield mitigations too. There are programs that the town can use to mitigate those and reuse those spaces in some way, shape, or form. So kind of where we're at now, we are at the draft report stage. I just handed off a draft to Will Conduff earlier. We're going to go back and forth a couple times, hopefully for the rest of the week. And hopefully early next week, we can put out a more polished draft, on the town's website with links so people can provide feedback and so that they have more to work with than just this presentation. It's a lot to try to fit 8-hour days. It's kind of difficult to try to fit into a 15-20-minute presentation, so thank you for bearing with me. That report needs to be submitted by June 30. That's the deadline. The state will then go through it with, if everything goes right, they'll approve it. We'll become that MVP certified, or excuse me, Douglas will become the MVP certified community. We'll have annual reporting by the core team, and then hopefully the core team is meeting, maybe formally or informally, where we're continuing that process of polishing those grant applications, right? Or those ideas that are kind of bigger and broader. How can we bring them down? What do we need to do? First steps, studies, engineering studies, surveys, and we can take those, we can use the action grants to build those surveys, to put them together, right? To then go through the studies, the permitting, and then construction, if that is the end-all be-all. Probably most concerning to this board is what can we get, how can we get it, when can we get it, right? So as a certified community, you can apply for up to $2 million as an individual community. I kind of touched on it earlier when we think about regional, right? Who's upstream, who's downstream, who's the neighboring, who's on the other side of the pond, who's on the other side of the river. Maybe we don't even touch by borders, right? Geographical borders. So thinking regionally that way, we can apply for up to $5 million, right? Well, like most grants, one town would have to take the lead, kind of be responsible for all the paperwork admin end of it, if you will. But each town would be responsible for their own piece. And those action grants, you can get up to $5 million. So that could be some kind of ward. We have, sorry, I just got my words a little twisted up. We have like a corridor study of a road, right? Route 16 corridor study. What's on it? Who's traveling on it? How is it? What's it doing? What's the impact here? What's the impact there? What if we do this? What if we do that? Right? Let's think in terms of a nature-based solution. What's happening on the Blackstone or the Mumford River or name a river or a watershed, right? Who's upstream, downstream? What would happen if a few towns got together and did some kind of corridor profile there, right? Would that solve a lot of culvert problems? Would that solve a lot of bridge problems? Would that solve insect, invasive species, aging populations? What could come out of a study like that, right? So there's money for it there. It's a one-year grant cycle. Typically, grants are awarded on July 1. I should go back, excuse me about that, backtrack a little bit. The application process usually comes out around March-ish, right? Open till about May. Grants are awarded roughly July 1. They're good. That grant cycle and all work within that grant and that contract needs to be completed by June 30. Right, so you have a 1-year grant cycle. Yes, this throws a big wrench in construction. Right, if we think we get an award at July 1, now we have to go through contracting and all that. That's going to take time. Then it's procurement laws. Now all of a sudden it's October, November, and construction season is coming to a close quickly. Right, the state has acknowledged that, and from my understanding, there is hopes of changing that, right? Changing that grant cycle. This past fall was the first time that they had a fall application process, and it was awarded in January, and now that grant was, it's going to be awarded tomorrow, February, and that grant will close June 2021, right? So now you have time to go through contracts, go through procurement, and hopefully start that construction process maybe early July and give you a 1-year cycle to do that work. There is a 25% match, kind of typical to a lot of grants. Cash or in kind can be used, no state funds can be used, but you can use like a CDBG grant to fund, to use for match. You can use FEMA monies to use, cover those matches, also in kind. So staff time, staff equipment, municipal equipment, I should say. And I want to open it to the board for question, comments. I know I threw a lot of information out there. Tried to sum up that 8-hour day, 20 minutes. I hope I didn't take up too much of your time, and I hope there are some questions or comments.
I have nothing.
I guess that means I did a really good job.
Traffic considerations in downtown Douglas, was that mentioned at all?
That was mentioned. I don't know if I elaborated on this enough earlier in the program, but the whole program is climate resiliency and kind of nature-based solutions. So thinking green infrastructure, swales, low-impact development, so thinking about stormwater management. It was brought up. It was definitely like the street trees was something that was brought up that I can think of right off the top of my head, and kind of thinking in terms of not just cut it down and get rid of it, but thinking about all those other grant programs, right? So complete streets, ADA, age-friendly, and if we are going to remove a tree, what are we going to replace it with, right? We don't want to just create a small little heat island in Douglas. So shade trees were brought up, were thought of, kind of making some sort of bump out. And these are all just ideas. This is not set in stone and going to happen, just for the record, right? So is there a place where we could put swales somewhere where the water, instead of having a curb where water can't pass through, water can pass through, and then it's going to naturally go through its process through that engineering or natural design, like water management place, right? The traffic was talked about, but it wasn't the heart of the conversation. So it was thought of, it was talked about, but the conversation was more geared to what can we do about this with a nature-based solution, or we can't really get rid of the cars, but what are the potential ways to lessen the impact of the cars was talked about. Excuse me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Set. Thank you for your time. I appreciate your time.
Budget discussions. We have highway and building and facilities. Mr. Furno and Mr. Furno.
Good evening.
Mr. Chairman, before we get started, I just want to reiterate where we are in the process. We're having preliminary conversations with department heads over what might or might not fit in the budget projection for the coming fiscal year. We've already met, the department heads and I, before this presentation is made to you on a department-by-department basis. I've already heard them express what their needs might be, and we've tried to find a way to fit it in the budget. Procedurally, my understanding, and I'm sticking to it, is that the town administrator prepares a budget and provides it to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen craft the warrant, and the budget that appears on it, on the warrant, is your budget. as the chief executive body of the town, it's your findings, because you are also the policy-making body of the town, as to priorities and the ability of the town to afford the requests of the various department heads. And the integrity of that process has to be maintained as we go throughout. So even though we parallel track budget briefings to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee, the reality is there is no budget or budget request to act upon until the Board of Selectmen have had the opportunity to see the entire budget as a balanced budget and sit on it for a couple of weeks and contemplate whether that's the direction you want the town to go in, because you may have your own amendments and edits to make to it before you really tie it up and send it off to the Finance Committee as a final product for them to make recommendations. And I want to emphasize that that's the process. This is sort of the open sausage-making part of the process, where we put all the ingredients on the table, and it may not be the neatest or most organized or easiest conversation to have, but it might be the most transparent and most helpful, because we can see what people are thinking. And lastly, the only thing I'll say is that there is nothing more dysfunctional in a budget process to find a need to be relevant. That's not, at some extent, some folks have to be careful what they wish for. If Gene and I, in doing the numbers with our department heads, are paying attention to all the things we should be paying attention to, and we forward it to you, and you're briefed adequately, and you set the direction for the town, and you do your part of the job, when it goes later in the process, it's not a rubber stamp. It's not a demeaning step to say, this is a good budget, and pass it. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. If we get to the floor of town meeting, we have 12 different versions of the budget floating around, that's a bad thing. It means there's no political consensus. It also means there may be some folks who are not doing their job. And we've seen that in neighboring communities where department heads and the town manager couldn't get their act together, and they had a 3-day town meeting. It was awful. So I'm not going to apologize to anybody if we have a fair amount of polish on our product, because that's the way it should be. I'm going to hand out the line by line, not to go through it, not to steal John's thunder, but so you have the context. So when he refers to a number or something he wants to do, you can see how it fits. In general, budgeting in a fiscally constrained environment is fairly simple. If we spent $100 on postage last year, chances are we're going to spend $100 again next year. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel and do a zero-based budget on that. You just know it, and you carry it forward. And so the 5-year budget projection, where we don't have a lot of room for a lot of brand spanking new programs, is going to be a fairly stable document. And the biggest priorities will be the biggest expense items that are growing the most rapidly. That's where we turn our attention. So John oversees no fewer than 5 budget lines. First one going around is tree warden. The second one is highway maintenance and snow and ice. And the third document is highway signs and highway administration. You know, all that highway sign money, John, don't spend it all in one place.
That's a lot of money.
All right, so I've said enough. I just wanted to provide the context. But it's the department head's
Okay.
opportunity to talk.
I'm just going to brief everyone on who we are, what we do, if that's all right?
No, I don't.
We've never met before, Joe.
Okay.
Say, who you look at?
Low visibility.
I need one for the minutes.
Your name doesn't sound familiar.
No, okay. So the highway department consists of myself, administrative secretary, 4.5 men. We're looking to hire one more guy. Adam's only half of mine for the most part, as he runs the building maintenance department.
Adam's a half a guy.
He is.
I hate to see a whole guy.
So we work out of the highway garage. It was built in 1931. We're a little bit undersized. A lot of equipment stored outside, as everyone can see. We don't have a wash bay ventilation system, but we do make do with what we have. We maintain over 82 miles of public roads and 15 miles of private roads. The private roads are done twice a year per recently passed bylaw. there are circumstances where I speak with Mr. Wojcik, and we have to do a little work on those more than twice. We have over 700 catch basins we clean annually. We patch potholes, paint crosswalks, mow and trim the ball fields, commons, the municipal center. We cut roadside brush, maintain, replace street signs. We assist the water sewer department with leaks. Adam has all the licenses for that as well. We work with the school department on any projects they have, or also the Board of Health. Our bigger project this year is going to be the Cedar Street Bridge. And Mr. Wojcik was able to get us a grant for more than half of that project. We'll be using some Chapter 90 money to complete that. And also, we'll be starting next week with a pavement maintenance study where we'll get all our streets in line on a document so people can know when their street's going to be paved and what's going to be done and when. We've been behind on the paving because of the bridge projects we've done in the last 10 years. You know, we spent over $1.5 million of paving money on bridges, so I know some people say our roads are in poor shape, which they are, unfortunately, but our bridges are built. You know, so this year we finally, I think Mr. Wojcik announced that we got a $400,000+, Chapter 90, so that should go to paving this year finally, so we can get back on some paving projects. To pave 1 mile of road, to give you an example, is $400,000. So, you know, so we'll get a mile of road paved this year. We've got 82 miles of roads. Do the math, it's going to take a long time, but, you know, there used to be my budget had money for paving when paving was cheaper and we had more money in the town, but it is what it is. Adam's our safety guy, our OSHA guy, takes a ton of classes, trains everyone throughout the town. During the daytime and well, actually 24/7, Adam's a captain on the fire department, I'm the deputy chief, responding to emergencies. So I'll jump into a little bit of the snow before I get to the budget stuff. So far we've had 10 snow events. I know a lot of people are saying, my God, it's been an easy winter, but I don't really think so. I don't think so, but, and we spent about $175,000 on those events out of our $199,000 snow budget. To put a number on what it costs in a storm, if we go out and you see the salt trucks one time, that's $7,000 to get the whole town done, just so people know. And if they see the plows going by with our subcontractors and paying my guys overtime, it's about $1,400 an hour to plow, just so you know. So as far as our budget goes, it's really not a lot of increases, but due to the gypsy moth infestation in 2015, you've seen all the dead oak trees everywhere. My guys have been cutting trees now all over town. National Grid's been helping us. We've got a long way to go. In your packet, there's a list of trees we've taken down since July 1. I think we're up to 141, and they're not just little trees. These are monster trees, and they're all white oak or red oak trees. I was able to secure another $50,000 to fall town meeting. I'm $36,000 through that money right now. So you'll see the firewood all over town that we've been taking down. We haven't even hauled any away. We're just getting it to the ground to make the streets safe. So I'm asking to increase the tree budget from $20,425, add another $10,000 to that budget, just to keep cutting the dead oaks. We've got hundreds and hundreds of dead oak trees that need to come down. So that's one increase I'm looking for in the tree budget, $10,000 as an increase. As far as our wages go, it'll just be the COLA. Most of my guys have been there a very long time, so they've been maxed out for a lot of years, so there's no steps for them. So it'll just be the less than 2% raise on the wages. As far as expenses, The only increase we're looking for is to comply more with the MS4 stormwater management. In your packet, you should have a page that tells you what the MS4 is. It's just more regulations they're unfunded mandates. So I'm looking for $7,500 to start cleaning some of our detention ponds. We need to clean 15 in a certain zone in town, and I want to do 3 a year for the next 5 years. So it's not such a big hit on the town, but if I'm looking to increase my expense budget by $7,500. So that's the increases in the budget itself.
John, do you want to stand pat on snow and ice? Or do you want to see another incremental?
Well, we're at 199.5. That's still not a realistic number. You know, perhaps if we went up to 225.
I was going to say, that makes more sense.
It does. I mean, if it doesn't snow, I'm not going to spend it, you know, so.
You can't. That's what Gene would say. If it doesn't snow, you can't spend it.
Correct.
And if it goes with more, we deficit spend the account.
Correct.
One that we can.
Yeah, if you look at the history here, you've never spent less than 200,000.
Yeah.
You had one very light year, 2016. I don't recall what I think.
Yeah, I don't remember without looking in the snow log. But
I think 15 was a heavy year and 16
It was.
not.
yeah.
Was it 15, the year that like West Street was down to a single lane?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. 14, 15. That was horrendous. We got almost 9 feet of snow in 4 weeks.
I think it would make sense for John to increase snow and ice to 225.
Certainly.
But other than that, the rest of it's fine. I mean, what kind of a dent does, for the tree warden side, is 10,000 like realistic? Is it really going to help?
Not really. I mean, I lean on National Grid. Adam and I went to their workshop, and they said we're in the wire business, not the tree business, because I get called crying all the time. I give a song and a dance, but, you know, they've been good to us. They did a lot of work on Mumford Street. If you drive through there, they gave me 4 crews for a week over there, and we cut a lot of dead hazardous trees there, you know. No, that'll only give me 30, so that's a little over 3 weeks of the tree crews in town, the $30,000. Just so you can put a number to that. And the average is, some days it's 1 tree. I mean, we took down a very large oak tree on Pine Street at the corner of Pine and South. That was 1 day, 1 tree. It was that big, you know, but the average is about 3 to 4 trees a day. And again, there's hundreds of dead oak trees in town.
Would it make sense to do the tree warden budget instead of giving them an extra to $20,000 there? At least it gives them twice the amount of time with a tree crew.
I mean, it's something that has a direct effect on residents when it snows or we have a windstorm.
It does, and my fear is a tree falling on a car.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like
falls on mine.
to, correct, I just don't like to even think about it, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
You know, but we are making an attempt to try to mitigate the problem.
Those would be my, just off the cuff, I know it's not really the position now, but I would say to increase, double what he's asking for on the tree side and put snow and ice at 225. Those would be the only
I'd agree with
adjustments I'd
both of
recommend.
those. I think every dollar we put towards tree removal is going to make everybody's life easier.
You could visit it when new growth is certified too. I mean, that's kind of what we did this year with the fall town meeting, where there was a starter amount at the annual. He was able to utilize that, and then as new growth certified, if it came in higher than anticipated, then we were able to put money towards that because it was a priority. As Matt says, we don't have the entire budget yet.
Yeah.
It's hard to allocate another, as justified as it can be. It's hard to say, yeah, we want to put another 10 or 20 here without seeing the whole picture.
Just so I remember.
You said the relationship with National Grid has been good. Can we leverage them for
It's been good. I mean, it was rocky for a little bit, but right now it's going pretty smooth. You know, they've been coming into town, and my trade-off is one of my guys for traffic for them, so they don't have to hire a detail. I've worked it out with the police chief, and they'll cut trees for us. So it's well worth it for me to put a guy to do traffic for them while they cut our trees, you know? So it's been better. Last week, they took down 7 or 8 trees on Southwest Main Street for us.
Is Marcy Reed still the president there?
I think she is,
Yeah.
you know? We have a new rep from within the last, couple of years?
Right.
Bob Moran, and, you know, it's been going okay.
He's learning?
Yeah, he's learning. That's a good way to put it.
I like that. He's learning. Right, Gene?
So I just remember back to whenever we had our power outage, Mrs. Reed was feeling a fair amount of public backlash. She came here and.
Sure.
And we didn't seize that opportunity to pile on her, but we
Yeah.
worked on
Yeah.
developing that relationship. If they're not being super responsive.
Yeah, I think we're good right now, so I don't think we should lean on them too hard, in my opinion.
What year did you say the highway barn was built?
1931.
Jesus. Still standing,
Yeah.
mostly.
Where does that fall in the capital plan?
Don't use the word fall.
Yeah,
Don't ever say fall in highway barn. It'll listen.
right.
It's in the plan. I think one of the concepts we want to work on and develop after the budget season is after town meeting is utilizing some of the town's property for a self-funding development program for the land itself in preparation for a highway barn, but utilizing the resources available, both in terms of house lots and gravel, to build up the resources of the town so that we can build a highway barn without having to bond out for it or do a capital exclusion. That, I think that has enough merit to it where the townspeople might support it, and it would be an efficient use of the piece of property we have in mind. So I don't think it's a mystery to anyone that the old gas pipeline property is a big pile of gravel, and it wouldn't be a bad spot for a highway barn. It has its own, it has a degree of seclusion, but it's also gives you access to the whole towns, not far from the existing barn. We'll still need that site for salt and sand and materials that need to be separated and stored, but we probably won't keep those buildings. They're more problems than they're worth. And they're not going to be big enough for the next generation truck.
Truck's barely making it right now.
Literally.
At some point in time, there'll be a new highway barn. Are you guys going to be able to handle going into a new facility? Like, you'll be like, nobody eat in the building.
That'll be.
Exactly.
That's right. All right, and lastly on my list, that I have is I gave everyone an equipment list, just so you know what I have, what the mileage is, the years, makes. On my capital this year, just to point out, is on the second page is the number 3 truck, which is a 2001 International. The truck is worn out. That's on my capital this year, and also a new sidewalk tractor. Just to point that out. And we have ordered our new truck from the capital money that we were awarded last year. We were hoping to get the grant. I know Mr. Wojcik filled everyone in about that as well.
Is the new truck going to replace number 6? The
New
other
truck is-
2001?
No, that's going to replace the 1996.
About the 1786.
I see that you still have the Clydesdales listed.
That's correct.
Steam operated.
And that's all I have.
Are you sticking with international on the?
I am.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Right in the maintenance if you want, quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we place a vote on the snow and ice?
What's that? I wasn't asking you to vote on anything in these briefings. But you know the lay of the land, so when the whole budget comes to you, you'll be able to look at it and see what it was that you were hoping to see.
Yeah, at some point when the whole budget comes out, that's when I think we'd want to do those tweaks and see what it really means.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not good.
You saw the email.
No, I didn't, but I won't. It's all right.
Again, I'm the maintenance manager. John's made it known. I'm the highway foreman, OSHA compliance officer, fire captain, EMT, backup water operator for the town. I'm responsible for maintenance on the municipal center, police station, senior center, post office, VFW, old fire station, old grammar school, and I assist with maintenance for the fire department, library, and highway department as needed. My budget's not changing at all. Mr. Wojcik's 5-year projection is right on with mine at this point. I've had no additional requests for any funding. The only thing I'm going to just go over quick is my capital request for this year. The main roof on this building is in dire need of replacement. The projected cost was around $345,000 to do this roof. Back in 1995, they just added a rubber roof right over the old one, so they have both roofs have to come off in order to put a new roof on. So we have old vent system that needs to be sealed off at the same time. So we have some work that needs to be done. And we've had insurance claims upstairs where the roof leaked and ruined ceiling tiles, buckled some of the floors, and so that's all taken place. We keep getting it patched, but it's definitely a priority that needs to be looked at. The roof units on the roof units for the second floor heat and AC, the school put them on in 1996. There's 4 units. We have 2 of them shut off. They're rotted out. We can't do anything with them. No one's up there at this time, but if you ever do want to expand upstairs, you're going to need to change all those or figure there's new technology that could put 2 in place of 4, and so we definitely have to look at something like that. The post office interior and exterior painting, if the board and Mr. Wojcik decide to renew the contract, it expires in January of 2021. We're going to need to paint the interior and exterior of the building per the lease agreement, and it's usually around $30,000 to $50,000 is my past quotes for that. So, and I have to have it done 6 months after the contract, the lease agreement is signed. So usually it's June 2021. So it just puts me right before the next fiscal year. So I have to have it this year approved for next year. So again, and I'm looking for the demolition of 19 Main Street, the brown house next to the VFW. That building's a hazard. We keep having vandalism on it. Kids break into it. We boarded it up several times. It does have asbestos siding. It has asbestos interior of it. The complete cost for everything should be around $40,000 for that building to be taken down. We've had an environmental survey done. I had it as backup. I'm not sure if it's in your packet or not.
Quick question.
Sure.
And I know I'm asking the right guys.
Sure.
Can you do a controlled burn of that building with the asbestos?
No.
No.
Nope. The last thing for my capital request is the post office air conditioner replacement. We had the main air conditioning unit for the whole post office is a 10-ton unit. It's going to cost around $50,000 to $60,000 to replace it. It's 24 years old. We've had major issues with it in the last few years. We've already spent over $12,000 in repairs on this one unit, and it's just only cost me $50 or $60 to replace the whole thing, but I have to keep it running. We don't have the funds to replace it. So, and if it ends up dying, it's part of the contract. We have to maintain a certain temperature for them, so we will have to have it replaced right away. Non-capital items up for discussion, and I had it on here, was the old fire station. We need to do something with that eventually. That building, that looks like the tower is going to fall down, but we need the storage also. So, so we have to figure out a way to, inside is the fire department boat, the hot box for the highway department, 2 fire trucks, and an antique truck. So we need that storage, but also we need to decide where we're going to go, what direction with that building. It's past, in my opinion. It's time to maybe keep the block part, put a package steel building on it, and get rid of the older part of the buildings, something similar to that. But I just wanted to bring it up while I was here to talk about it. But that definitely needs to be addressed. We had a break-in recently. Kids got in there, and they went through the stuff, and I found stuff outside, and so we've changed all the locks on it. But they smashed out the back window. We boarded it up. It just keeps happening. Unfortunately, I know the premiums for vacant buildings are through the roof, I'm sure, with this stuff. And the last one is the VFW building. Same thing, back, I think it's been probably 4 or 5 years, all the copper was stolen out of it. They broke in, stole all the copper, the same with the brown house at the same time. They did both. And we had an environmental study. The only thing with that building that has asbestos is the boiler. Everything else is clean, so we can decide whether we want to. That property's pretty reasonable if you get rid of the VFW and 19 Main, maybe you have a good property for something, a future police station or whatever you guys decide, but, you know, you have the soccer field in the back, so there'd be consideration for that.
So neither one of those two buildings is like, it would probably cost more money to try and get those structurally sound again than it would be to tear them down.
Correct. That's exactly what it comes down to.
So, although even saying that in public, there's going to be pitchforks and torches.
Yeah, it happens to all of us, don't worry.
Matt, what's the prospective rental for the post office going forward? We have negotiated some, or?
I think well, did you do an extension?
So they did an extension, from what I can, it was a 5-year with a 5-year, I think it's a 5-year option. I don't know who has the option, but whether it's the post office or us, but there is an extension on it. So.
I'm just looking at it from
that
a
with
business
Matt.
perspective of the income versus the capital requirements.
It's not keeping up.
Yeah, the building needs windows. There's 63 windows in that building. You know, it's not, I mean, you're talking $250,000 for windows just for that building. If I do them all, if I just do one floor, maybe it'll be less, and I don't know what you're going to find when you start digging into that.
So if we don't renew the lease contract with the post office, they have to, in essence, find someplace else to locate. And about the only thing that we'd have left there that would be a town-based asset would be the senior center.
Well, they don't have to rent it from, downstairs, you mean, yeah. If you were going to marshal your resources to defend one historic building in town, which one would it be? Probably probably two, right? The library and the old town hall would be the two most significant features. And you don't want to spread your resources so thin to protect every single building that may have aged over the years gracefully, to the detriment of all of them, when you have to be honest, pretty cool old town hall that's a monster to take care of. So, but you have all that history. You have the Wallace Devise, you have the clock tower and the spire, and it's part of the town. It's part of the visual effect of the town. And I don't know how many people turn their heads to look at the VFW or the old grammar school. It's not architecturally significant. It doesn't, it's a lot of memories there, but it's not on the same playing field as the old town hall. It just isn't.
No, I'd be more apt, if we're going to put money into an existing town structure, it would be the post office building. I mean, I'd like to see if there's a way that we could get additional income from the postal service, so it would kind of tip the scales back in the favor of, we're not so reliant on it, but.
That would be your purview as the board to determine that lease. So you can negotiate. I mean, I think the best thing to do, whenever you do these things, you got to go out and find out what other people have done. So the last year's renewals, what are they on a per square foot basis? That's give you a sense of what your range of possibilities would be.
With the old fire station and the VFW, we'd be better served to just tear them down.
I think the old fire station is really at this point a hazard.
I agree with that.
The storage space is centrally located and valuable, and we could probably operate with the same footprint there and not trigger any Concom or other concerns, because it is close to the pond. But, I mean, I think if you gave the thing a pretty good push, probably shouldn't say this in public, but if you push it in the right spot.
If the tower falls off, I don't know what's left of the back of the building.
I just hate to have somebody like nearby when it's not if, it's when that tower comes down.
Well, that's just it. I mean,
because I saw it in the last windy day, it was doing a lot.
It does move.
It moves a little bit, yeah. So, but kids goofing around, they don't appreciate the danger of anything. They've never had anything that big fall on them, so they don't know what it's like. But you pull, and look, it's making a noise, and then it's on top of you, and then it's not fun anymore.
No.
So let's not wait. All right, let's be proactive. And
who wants to climb up there and take the old siren down?
Well, that's a different structure. We can get someone to do that. Yeah, that's easy.
I thought that was even more rickety, though.
Yeah, that's all right. We got a guy who's going to do that.
I think you want to take that out and put it in the middle of Oktoberfest and let people pay $1 to turn it on.
Can we relocate that to the new fire station?
I suppose, yeah.
Neighbors will be complaining in no time. That end of town's not used to hearing it that clearly.
I think there's an ear raid.
Yeah.
No, I think at some point we do need to sit down and as a board and just take a vote and say, let's get a cost for demolition of both of these buildings and move forward from there.
I've already reached out for the old fire station for an environmental survey, because we don't have one. I've reached out last week when I was putting this all together and tried to be proactive. So I'm going to try to have that done if I have the funds this year and get it done early spring. And then at least we'll know if there's any other hazards or anything. I try to find the red flags ahead of time, so.
That'd be helpful. Is there like a couple more jobs that we can give you in town, Adam,
Anything.
or-
Go for it. I can be a police officer too. I just need some training.
Nothing to see here. Move on.
Move along, people.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank
guys.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to run to the restroom quick.
All right, have at it.
All right.
I'm going to take the same break as he.
Why don't we take, you want to take 5?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we?
Let's see. Awesome. Thank you.
You're going to take the vote, pass witnesses.
Yes, so now we're at the host community agreement for Z&T and possible votes.
Talk with those guys.
I did. Relatively basic.
And I believe this is just our standard template for a host
It is.
community agreement, which is identical to the one that they signed for the other facility.
One exception.
Is the address is to be announced, I think, is
Yeah, place of business location to be determined within the town. I think they have some sites under consideration, one in particular. But that is the only change between this HCA and the previous one.
Okay. So I don't have any objections to approving it with the proviso that when we do get into town meeting business, we're going to want to put a warrant article for increasing the amount of marijuana licenses from 3 to 5.
Because right now, with approving this one, we're committed to 3, correct?
Well, my understanding was we're not committed to anything at this point.
Well,
You're giving
I would
people the
debate that.
opportunity to win
A
the
license.
race to a license.
But I would rather have,
and they're
I agree. I'd
clear on
rather have
that.
expanded capacity to have more retailers on whatever term we want to use in town.
yeah.
And I think Mr. Wojcik's description is apt. The HCA is a step on the way to them getting a license. It is a necessary step.
Yeah, this is more for the Cannabis Commission needs to see this in place.
Yeah, I think I've said this before, there's a moderate position here, which is you don't want to make so many HCA's that they're like candy, and you're creating sort of the false impression that these 14 people are going to have a legitimate shot at 3 licenses. That's unfair. I don't think it's good business. But if you say you will do 4 or 5 agreements, because you have 3 licenses available, and they have to have a location to be licensed by the CCC. So there's going to be that rush to find that piece of property that fits the bill and then go through the CCC process for that state license. If we only issue 3 as a town, then if one fails, then you've lost, there's that much time that you have to make up to get that next candidate in the door. So I kind of want to shift the risk over to the business community rather than bear the risk on the town side.
And I think that makes sense, provided that the business understands that there's no guarantee that they'll ultimately end up with a license, depending upon where they come in.
Yeah. I think in
with the
this
race.
instance, the disclosure was pretty direct.
Clear.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we get it.
I think all the retailers that we've spoken with, or applicants, I should say, that we've spoken with, or anyone that's expressed interest, they know the procedure very well. They're very well-versed. Most of them have attorneys or someone to help them through the process, and I think they know what the process entails, so
So there's no guarantee that a
there's no
host agreement
guarantee, no.
translates into a license at some future date.
Correct.
That's fair, yes.
Okay.
We base the number 3 on the amount of liquor licenses are available in town, right?
More or less.
The cannabis is the hot thing right now, and everyone's getting on board, and I think I'm on board with all of that. But what if there's a mad rush for more liquor licenses and we feel a little pressure? Are we going to change?
Well, there are,
Liquor
We have to
licenses
go to
are
the state.
determined on our population. It's set by the state, and we
Right.
actually have a lot of licenses available except for package stores. We have 3 available, and we have 2 right now that are taken. We have 1 that is now open.
And to increase that, my understanding is you have to go to the state.
Yeah, whereas the cannabis licenses for the town are at our discretion as to how many we offer.
Okay.
that I have no problem with this.
Do we want to make a motion?
I move that we approve the HCA for Z&T as presented to the board.
I'll second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I have the documents. We can sign them in the Selectmen's office during executive session.
It's getting crowded in there. In the selectmen's office. The table.
Oh.
There's no real estate left.
I cleaned it.
All right, so, Board of Selectmen stipend and possible votes. So, this came via you, Mr. Bonin.
I was wondering if you were going to do that.
I did.
But if I was chairman, I would call this the Democracy Revitalization Act. But in all seriousness, I mentioned it to a board member, and in a moment of selectman bravado, I asked Suzanne to put it on the agenda. And it's not lost on me that this board is wonderful. I think we serve the people very, very well, but a concern I have, quite honestly, is the lack of competition when it comes to the electoral process. And I think I was doing yard work, and I thought, you know what, maybe if we were to incent others in the community to get involved and to increase the political dialogue in the town, that would be a good thing. Really, the only thing that came to mind was, I don't know what we make as selectmen, $200, $250.
Yeah, $300.
$300 quarterly, to see if.
No, don't say that.
No, it's 300 annually.
Oh, annually.
People think you make more money than you really do.
No, it's only $300, period.
It doesn't take long before we're going to get lynched.
So my thought was, in the interest of transparency, to have a discussion with the board is to see if the amount that we do get paid was probably set back decades ago, if that's something that we should look at.
I take what you say to heart, and I agree with the fact that we should have a lot more interest in town government as a whole, whether the positions are paid, almost kind of paid like ours, in a lot of volunteer positions. But I don't ever want to get to a point where anyone takes one of these positions for the money. I don't know how to put it any plainer than that. And that, I would be concerned. I'd be concerned. We go, I don't want to say we go, but you look at other towns and some of them pay their municipal elected officials what we would consider many times what we make. And I would just be concerned, and I'd like to hear what everybody thinks, that someone would say, I'll run for that position because I need the money, or I'd like to have the money. $300 a year, I think it's safe to say that none of us are here for the money.
I don't think anybody's going to run for a local position because they need the money. Like even in the towns that do have a larger stipend than what we're offered, if you look at the overall median income that's sitting in that town, they're certainly not doing it for the cash. It's kind of one of those things to where we do put in a significant amount of work into the town itself throughout the budgeting process and things like that. And I'm kind of on the fence. I could go either way with it, simply because it's like the amount of hours that you put in, it's a relatively thankless job. But I mean, I think everybody's time is worth something. It's like, I certainly don't think that these positions should be free completely. Like, I know towns that are surrounding us don't pay their selectmen at all.
Right.
Which is probably one of the reasons why they don't have a lot of volunteerism, because it's not really people won't come up and shake your hand and say, hey, thanks, you made this town better. Usually you get criticized for it. But I think that your time should be compensated for something. And I think the $86 a quarter that it breaks out to.
64.
64, I'm sorry. Or whatever it turns out to be.
Depends on what bracket you're in now, doesn't it?
I guess so, yeah.
Even worse.
I know, I bet that.
Yeah.
If we were to be compensated at any rate of pay, minimum wage, for the hours we put in, it'd be more than, I think,
what we could bear off of our budget.
Exactly. I mean, we wouldn't be able to afford it. I mean, I think positions like this are somewhat of a labor of love.
They are. I mean, I'd like to see it to where we were in line. Like, we have other stipend-based positions for people running departments. So I think it should be something that we're in line. There shouldn't be a huge disparity between us and, water and sewer commissioners that are dealing with an enterprise fund, or any of the other ones. I mean, there should be something in there to kind of make it boilerplate. But again, I don't think anybody chose to run for office to try and get rich as a selectman in Douglas, if that makes sense.
No, no one's gonna get rich. I think we all know that.
I'll go on record and say I actually got blasted on Facebook because somebody posted the selectmen's budget, which was over $100,000,
Yeah.
saying, "You guys make that much?" And I'm like, if I did that, I wouldn't need my regular job.
Exactly, yeah.
So,
And, you know, I feel at some point, you know, somebody made a decision that those sitting on the board should get a stipend. And I don't know how many years ago that decision was made, or when was the last time an increase was suggested, but I don't think it hurts to have periodic increases to that stipend.
I would be, like, even if it was a matter of that, I'd be more apt that I think it would be a larger benefit to some people, because, I mean, a lot of the people in town are self-employed and things like that, that maybe making us a special town employee, which we are, giving them access to benefits would be more valuable than a stipend.
I see that as, I think it's more palatable than an increase in the stipend.
I was on the board.
That was changed a few years ago.
Yeah, when I first got on the board, that was something that was available to people who held positions that had stipends. And we did away with that.
Was there a reason?
Well, it was costing the town a lot of money. And it ended up being, for some people, a reason for running, you know?
I think you're echoing what I said a few minutes back.
Well,
it's just a different method of...
Right, but, you know, if you're self-employed...
For the health insurance, man.
That health insurance benefit is a huge benefit. And I can't remember how many thousands of dollars it was costing us at that time, but it was significant.
What are your thoughts, Matt?
We never talk about your boss's salary.
Right. Not about the salary, I mean, but as to weighing it out versus, like, as a board made a decision to do away with the benefits, this board can make the decision to reverse that back, too, if that was the direction we chose to go in.
Yeah, I suppose that would probably require some sort of town meeting action. Because it's a form of compensation and you have an article. I know for a fact that even if you paid 100% of your premium, but you were eligible to enroll in the town's plan, if you're a self-employed person, you're going to save a lot of money. But that doesn't treat everybody the same. So you may have a spouse that has a great plan, you're on her plan, his plan, and that offer doesn't mean anything to you. So what do? You kick back to the stipend, a $500 stipend or something. I don't know, you'd have to weigh that out. But we have one department head who's here 19 hours a week, who's not eligible for benefits. He's self-employed in life, and what he pays for a premium for his family is head splitting. The amount of money he pays and how much he would save if we just put him on our.
What harm would it do to the town or to us on, financially speaking, would it do to make the option available to a like a part-time employee or special town employees? To where if you opt out, like we did this in one of the collective bargainings, if you opt out, there's a kicker for you.
There is a cost associated.
Now I'm going to put my member of a board of a self-insured trust hat on and say, well, I'll take you if you got good claims experience. You're not going to hurt. That's how you hurt, right? So if you're paying your own premium, and that's not the burden, there's no burden on the town, it's not in our budget, the only way it comes back is if you have a massive claim. But that's the purpose of insurance, right?
I mean, I think that's how I would probably propose it, is saying, like, all right, it's made available to, special town employees or part-time employees, like looking at our board, and for those of us that don't need it, if you choose to opt out, then your stipend's $1,000 or whatever it is. I think that way it's not doing any harm, but it's also offering a benefit to people that choose to sit in an elected position.
That's a key phrase, elected position. I think we might have some leeway with elected people, but we wouldn't
With part-timers.
with part-timers that are on the payroll.
Yeah.
Because that would be probably a 32B issue,
Okay.
because we'll be giving people different cost for the same offer.
So I'll take part-time off, and we'll just say elected-based positions. So, to where it's kind of addressing a couple of areas. Because I do recall that there was a benefit to be paid to people that opted out of our insurance, at least on the previous
It's
policy.
$300.
There
If you
go.
waive it when you start, it's $300. It's, I think it's $1,000 if you leave while you're employed.
I take what Mike Hughes said to heart, and I think it was well said, but I am very uncomfortable voting on a raise for myself.
Well, that's always the dilemma.
It is. I was a union official for many years in a previous life, and I can't begin to tell you the level of discomfort I have.
Well, I mean, just so I'm clear, like Matt said, it does no harm on the insurance side of it.
I mean, apparently no, and that would, yeah.
So then the idea that it's costing the town thousands is, it's garbage, it's not there.
No, if it's 100% paid premium on the part of the elected official. There may be some associated cost if there are claims that could end up increasing our overall insurance cost.
Well, that'd be no different than if somebody that's
That
in a
would,
regular
yeah,
pool
I mean,
was.
Yeah, it wouldn't be, but it's not entirely without some liability.
Under our old plan, it probably would have been, there would have been some financial harm to the town, right? Prior to us being self-insured.
It was before my time, but I think the town paid part of the premium.
It was the same
Right.
as any employee,
Yep.
whatever the
Yeah.
percentage was at that time.
80, well, it's 80/20 now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I mean, the options of saying an elected official can opt in and use the town as a purchasing agent, you know, you're going to get a better premium than going to Marketplace. I'd be guaranteed you get a better premium than going to Marketplace. I think that would be a benefit to people that are looking for decent health insurance. And it is cheaper than trying to shop it out. What are your thoughts on it, Tim?
If there's no, I wouldn't be in support of the health insurance for selectmen. I thought that was, you guys were right to remove that. If there's no cost, direct cost to the town, I think that's, something just from a human resource perspective, we should look into even further, right? There are no benefits with this job, and not that you're involved to do that, but there is something to be said about taking care of your quote-unquote employees, and if that can help. I don't see a reason not to look into it further or pursue it, really. Now, on the stipend front, just bringing it up was a challenge, right? That's an important discussion, but...
It all bears merit, and I mean, at some point in time, you have to figure out what is it worth. And I agree with, it is uncomfortable to vote yourself a pay raise. Nobody wants to do it, but Senate and Congress don't have a problem doing it ever. I think they do it a couple times a year, and they feel all right about it. Just saying.
Not the group to compare yourself to.
Thank you. Thank you for putting into words, Mr. Wojcik, what I was thinking.
8% approval.
It puts you in an awkward position because it's one of those to where all of us have moral fiber. It's not how we're wired and things like that. And I would probably lean to say that previous boards were set up a lot of the same ways that we are, which is why it's still a very low stipend. Because you don't feel good about giving yourself a pay raise. But the downside to it is, we're the only ones that can vote ourselves a pay raise. So we're in a catch-22.
It's
Certainly a good point.
It's a little bit harder to do in the Massachusetts system where you have staggered terms, but one technique is to say, you would set a pay raise to take effect after everyone currently serving's term is expired.
Right.
So if people are really upset about your $300, they could vote you off.
That's what the legislature does. You can't.
Right.
They voted for the next session.
You have to win an election, you have to be rehired or renewed, basically, to take
And then
advantage.
you start at the higher rate.
You start higher.
But you're right, it's tough to do when everybody's,
Staggered, yeah, so, because you're doing a one-year budget, not a 3-year.
Yeah.
But you could pass a resolution or a policy.
But there's only 5 of us, right? We'd get done,
3
cycle
years.
through in 3 years.
3 years, correct, yeah, 1, 1, and 2.
So,
So you're giving the position a raise, not the people. The people have to win re-election to take advantage.
That's more palatable. But looking at previous elections, we're pretty much giving ourselves a pay raise. Nobody runs against us.
But that's other people's fault then. I mean, they have the opportunity to run if they choose to, if that's the issue they want to put on the table.
I like to say it's because we're that good that they just don't want to.
You know, there's somebody who does this dialogue about, it's not really about what I'm worth, is it, am I worthy? And I start, you're not supposed to comment on your boss's salary, but I don't think $300 remunerates people effectively for the amount of time and dedication they put in to basically being the board of directors of a $30 million corporation. Yeah. At some point, you got to say, you know, I am worth more than a penny a minute.
yeah, I think so too.
Right.
I know, you say that all the time. No, I'm kidding. Yeah.
I do like the idea of having, if we were to do anything like that, having it take place after everybody has cycled through an election cycle. I like that. So it wouldn't happen until the beginning of the next term for each election that comes through. And I still, even if we were to raise it to $1,000, nobody's going to do it for the money. If $1,000 is really what's going to make your budget that much better, you're welcome to the job.
David's thinking, how about $9.99?
I
Something
feel like
magical about
I'm
those
sitting
things.
here at the bottom of the barrel and having everyone stare at me.
It's your
I
tie.
really do, I really do.
It's your tie.
It has got to be the tie, I'll have to keep this one. I'm just uncomfortable with the idea, and I don't think anything is going to make me comfortable with it. I have seen, and I'm not going to express the analogy, but I have seen before when positions have gone from low or no pay to much higher pay, and the dynamics, these were not elected positions, but the dynamics change as they become attractive to people who are attracted to the increased pay. I don't think that we could ever even consider raising it to what we're worth for the time we put in. Not even for what we accomplished, just for the time we put into the job, because it would be many, many times what it is now. But I think I'll fall back on my 3-word phrase before, labor of love, and leave it there.
I think we beat this one up pretty good.
I think so.
It was fun. Anybody?
Just take it under
Who would have thought I'd be the
advisement.
fiscal conservative?
Punched your ticket tonight.
I took a hit. The moment of bravado,
No, I
Suzanne.
think it's a discussion worth having.
It is.
It is.
No, it
You
is.
know?
It definitely is, yes.
And for the
And
record,
I understand
Dave
you're
and Tim
being
switched
uncomfortable
parties.
with it, I think we all are. But at some point, you know,
You know, I'm going to say it, I think we're worth more than what we're currently.
Oh, I'd agree 100%.
So-
It's not a question of worth.
Yeah.
This is a great board, and I'm not, I'd exclude myself from that just out of modesty. You have 4 other great members here. Everybody works well, everybody does a good job. They go above and beyond, they spend their own personal time on board issues. I don't at all want to even have anybody think that it's a reflection of anybody's worth here. I'm very, very proud to serve with you guys.
Even me, Dave?
Even you.
All right.
Even you. Most days, Kevin, most days.
Well, I mean, I think we can bat around and talk about it, future agendas and stuff, and give people a chance to stew it over and find a way to make it feasible and palatable for everybody. I don't want anyone being uncomfortable with a vote. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we got a budget that we probably have a few discussions on. We can lump it into a future talk. We have no problem with that.
All right.
Since I did the hard work of bringing it up, you guys can put it on the agenda now.
I gave you full credit for it.
Yeah, you did.
You're
And
a
I
progressive
appreciate you bringing
thinker.
it up. It did need to be talked about.
yeah, it did.
It did.
Yeah.
It was an elephant that's been sitting in the room for a long time, so you're a trailblazer.
I am not afraid to bring up the difficult
Comfortable?
discussions.
No, you are not.
All right. So that brings us to the discussion on Chromebooks and possible votes, which I can say I have very mixed thoughts on that one. I'm going to go on record and say I'm not a fan, just because of the opportunity that it leads to where you have public internet access on them, And that's a backdoor to just all kinds of troubles. And I just know every meeting I've ever run, one of the first rules is you walk into my meeting and your laptop is closed and your phone is down. And you got a pen and paper and you're gonna write it out. Which I'm old school like that, but it's just too much of a distraction sitting in front of some people, my opinion. But I'm open for everybody else, and I can be swayed either way.
Well, I can tell you where this item came from. It was in that same moment of Selectman bravado. When Mr. Hughes and I were walking back to the Selectman's room after a meeting, and we debated as to whether or not some 8, 9, 10 years ago, whenever the proposal was for the Selectmen to get iPads, and we poo-pooed that, whether or not we would have, in the end, saved money. And Mike and I both kind of thought that between Suzanne's time, the paper spent, that the iPads probably would have, made their money and then some. So with that, I just threw it out there as something to think about. I'm not particularly beholden to them. I see value in it, but
I like where you're.
I've always wanted them.
I like where you're at with it, because as much as I don't like somebody having a laptop open, I hate this worse. So I'm not a big.
So what do you do?
Well, we have that TV up there, and we have a TV back there.
You're not going to read the.
Put the agenda up on that, or put it on the one in the back of the room. It's not hard to look back on it. And if there's supporting documentation that needs to come in, Suzanne could come in with a Chromebook, or Matt could come in with his Surface, and very quickly project it up onto one of those for us to be able to see.
Well, we're supposed to be reading our packets before the meeting. Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if, the CMRPC report, while very thorough, would be best viewed for the first time on a big screen over there.
And again, I think at some point, paper is going to go away, and to reduce the use of it makes sense. An electronic device gets you into the 21st century.
Well, the good news,
I can go either way with it.
when it comes with the CMRPC stuff, Tim, you can brief us on all that stuff before it shows up.
You knew that was coming as well, because you brought up CMRPC. I sat here very quietly and didn't say anything.
Yeah, you guys were very respectful of that meeting, and I thank you for that. But,
The other one, I mean, I suppose I could look into something like that if there was a way, and it would require IT's intervention, is to make it so it's got access to the LAN. Like, you can access anything that's within Town Hall off of the network, but there's no public internet access on these things.
Well,
I was just going to say the same thing.
Well,
No internet access, but I download the file, and you're able to see the file.
Yeah,
You don't have to see
everybody's
it
got
on
a
the
home
network.
computer. I don't know why we need to.
I would,
go ahead.
I would say two things. I mean, when I read the agenda, you email it several days ahead of time.
I do.
And I read it usually at my office or at home, and I have access to it on my phone if I need to look something up and look at my little tiny print there. Other than the agenda and what we're doing here, what other uses do we foresee? Because if we foresee other uses as selectmen, wouldn't the lack of internet kind of cripple those uses?
I can't think of any other use that selectmen would have for a laptop. Really. We all have our personal emails, that's what we get at home.
Right.
We all get the agenda from Suzanne that we can look over and see if there's any mistakes that we can call her out on in the middle of the
Which is very
selectmen's
rare.
meeting.
We've gone from a Chromebook all the way up to a laptop.
But, I mean, one way or the other, like, we have access to a lot of the stuff in there. I don't see anything that we would need public internet access for as selectmen.
It doesn't happen a lot, but I could see accessing Google or something like that during a meeting to have to retrieve some information, and I'm not saying it's happening a lot. It seems to me to be a waste of the technology.
But I would like to go, like, I like the idea of no paper.
Somebody mentioned iPads a little while ago. Would they be more useful than Chromebooks for what we do here?
I mean, all we'd really be looking at is the agenda and the packet. So we'd be looking at a PDF on it.
How about a $35 Amazon?
Kindle?
Yeah. Just something to scroll.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You can't use a Kindle.
Just a reader?
Yeah, with a PDF reader.
Why can't you use a Kindle?
How are you going to download onto the Kindle?
Oh, yeah. Nope, you'd need like iPad or something similar to that.
They don't have little tablets for, like,
Yeah, they have the Fire tablets.
yeah.
They're kind of limited, I think, in what you can do with
Well,
them.
you
I guess
can
my
do the-
feeling with the technology is if we're going
We have
to
a ton
do
of
something
them.
like that, if we look at it, we're
Doesn't
going
the
to get
school have
enough
a
use
bunch?
out of it. I don't see any use in limiting it. Why would we limit it?
Right, no, I agree with that too. Security be damned.
I mean, you think of an iPad, as you went somewhere and you wanted to take pictures or something like that, you'd have the ability to do it.
Just out of curiosity, how much time does it take for you to organize a book?
Well, one of the problems is getting information from people. Sometimes I'm waiting for a while on information, and it depends on how many items, but it takes about a good half a day just to put all the paperwork together into the books. And then I scan everything, and I make that really nice table of contents for you, and
Which I'm very
Spelled-
appreciative of.
No,
We're all back-ended by Google here, right? So a Chromebook, those are only 199 bucks. Like, they're pretty cheap. So if you're gonna do something like that, if it's all back-ended, all of our back-end is Google, and you do a Chromebook, you're done. That's already powered by Google. Then all you'd have to do is upload things onto the Google Drive and give these machines access to it. And you just restrict it down, like I said, no public internet access, and you can even do time of day routing based off of, I can talk to our IT person and explain, like, between 7 o'clock and 9 o'clock PM, these do not have public internet access. And that way it just eliminates the idea that somebody's gonna be checking out Facebook and doing all those other things. It at least covers us.
in some towns, what they do is they have them, they're handed out for the meeting, and then they're collected again. They don't go anywhere. They don't go home with the selectmen. They stay here, and they're just strictly for the meeting to look at the agenda. I know Northbridge does it that way.
If it would cut down on our paper costs,
Well, I mean, if it's taking Suzanne a half a day, I mean, that's a great question, and that's a pretty telling answer. A half a day of your time is very valuable. And if we get most, not all, but if we get most of that time back, that in and of itself probably makes it worth it.
I like the idea they just stay here.
I certainly don't have any objection to it.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either.
I have enough freaking computers at my
I
house.
would have said
don't
the
want
same
one more.
thing.
So that would require a vote for us to do that. And Matt, we'd need to go to town meeting to approve a line item increase for the budget to purchase these, wouldn't we? Unless you think we got enough in the selectmen's
Depends- I was
budget
gonna
now.
say, it depends on how much they cost.
Yeah, you would know better than I do, because I don't process the selectmen's budget.
We could check the internet right now to see.
Well, I don't know how
it
much
costs.
they cost. I know how much, I would know how much we have left in the,
Yeah, and we'd have to see if we get it
Right.
piggybacking on anybody else's deal where
Right.
we've already purchased something.
Well, where you're looking at the Chromebooks, you wouldn't want anything with a ton of, we don't need anything with a ton of memory on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, they don't have to be that advanced. And the bottom rung Chromebook,
right.
which Google device, is 199 bucks.
So you're talking over
Give us a couple of weeks to
Yeah.
give
look
you a
into it.
sense of.
See what's what.
See a low of 109 and a high of 236 for QuickBook.
I may just go buy a Kindle or whatever those things are and call it even. Right?
I've got 2 iPads at the house. If you want one of them, you're welcome to go through
I
that.
have one of those too. So maybe it's overkill, but look into it.
No, I mean, if it's gonna,
No, I think it's not overkill if it's saving time.
if it's freeing up
Exactly.
Suzanne's time and we're not
And the
getting reams
paper,
of paper,
you know?
then okay.
So I don't think it's overkill at all.
How do you feel about it? You like those?
If people use them, I've tried this experiment, like I think I told you once in a conversation. 7-member town council, 2 of them never even turned on a computer in their whole lives. So that was wasted on those 2 people. And then I had a couple of really fussy customers and wanted to be able to do everything, right? Searchable terms and upload everything as a PDF, and when I click on that agenda item, it should take me immediately to the backup, and I was like, we don't have time to do that for you. The whole
That's
idea
what I
was
do.
a time saver. No. Actually, electronically scanning in everything as a searchable, that's a whole different copy of Adobe, that's,
No, but I can do that.
yeah. But it would take a lot of time
Yeah.
to make everything clickable and searchable and being able to circle things and handwrite is. So in other words, out of 7 people, I had 2 or 3 people who tried to use it. And then it was just more tactile and facile to just get a binder and flip through it. But having said that, that was an incredibly dysfunctional and intellectually immature group, so this is different.
Is it really? You sure about that?
I'm pretty sure whoever they were.
Give you a
See
chance
where
to
they are
retract
now.
that statement.
No. So you guys might actually use it the way it's contemplated, which is it's a PDF document.
The biggest,
Flick your finger across it, you're like swiping, you're just swiping past everything, get to what we're all referring to the same document, and then there it is.
the biggest reason that I'm a stickler on the internet side of it is that we're scrutinized for almost everything. And I know a lot of people have the bliss of like, I'm not even gonna look and see, but these people seek me out and like to give me grief. And it's like, back to the previous agenda item, I'm not paid enough to actually deal with that. But I just don't want even the slightest sign of impropriety or the opportunity to say, hey, look, you're getting, internet messages and all that other stuff. Like, that's just not, it's not who this board is. I know we all have standards and scruples, and we all work hard to adhere to the laws and bylaws that we have, so.
I do remember to get one of those.
I just don't want to open that door. And if, to Matt's point, if we all feel that we'll use it, then it's a wise expenditure. If it's just going to be, hey, look, there's 5 Chromebooks sitting there gathering dust and we're still getting a packet, then what's the point?
Well, I think if we used it, certainly for the meetings, we'd do away with the packet.
I was going to say, trust me, if you have those, you're not getting a packet. You'll still get the emailed version,
Right.
but you won't get a hard copy.
Yep,
paper.
works. That works.
What's that sound, Tim?
Sounds good.
All right. So we have to open the May 4th, 2020 annual town meeting and special town meeting warrant, and close the annual town meeting and special town meeting warrant April 7th, 2020, and possible votes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Just so you're aware, I put my checklist in the packet for you, so you can see the timeline of everything.
Did see that. Thank you.
I see 4 typos. Just kidding.
Excellent. We'll put that in the calendar right now.
Approve minutes?
I'll make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes on January 21st, 2020.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
I'll make a motion that we approve the executive session minutes for January 7th, 2020, and retain.
I'll second it. Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion?
Actually,
Yes.
is that correct? It is, okay. No
All
further
those-
discussion from me.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Your report.
No, we have one
No,
more.
and finally, I'll make a motion to approve the executive session minutes of January 15th, 2020, and retain.
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Your report.
Now you can move in.
I'll try to keep it brief because we need some energy left over for executive session. 2 things then. Where are we with the budget? The budget's in good shape. Gene has been refining the revenue projections, and we've been getting department head requests. Frankly, I think the highway superintendent is the one who's asked for the most to be added to his budget and on the expense side. We've had the personnel side for a while, and that's not going to change. So currently, we're looking at some pretty aggressive assumptions. 6% increase in health insurance, which is a complete wild card. We'll get a preliminary renewal rate estimate at our board meeting in the next week. So I'll have a better sense of whether 6% is an intelligent number or not for the self-insured group. Knock on wood, we were on course for that as of our last claims history review. So I'm still targeting that number. I'd like to see that be the number. We have built in a large increase for property casualty premiums. I'm modeling, so modeling doesn't mean I've put it in there. Modeling means I'm testing the idea and see where it takes me, of a 2% for the schools. And with those three major assumptions in place, you know, we're on the healthy side of the black before finalizing what we have. So not trying too hard to push the department heads to cut anything or to hold the lid on anything. If they need it, we want them to ask for it. And if it's, you know, a 5-digit number or a 4-digit number, you know, right now it looks like we can accommodate those kinds of changes and still end up with a balanced budget with room to spare. So that's where we are with it. And as you all know, I mean, I share that spreadsheet with anybody who wants to see it. So if you ever want to just load it on your computer and play with it. It's been updated quite a bit since the last time you saw it, because it goes out another year, and it's got the past history of the new growth that's been certified and the free cash that's been rolled over. So it's a different looking financial engine than it was even 2 years ago. That's the budget. Capital, we'll start deliberating in earnest on capital. What's happened, or some of the wrinkles that are occurring with capital, is that we tried very aggressively to win grants, and we did not. You know, we had 3 major grant applications, not successful. You know, obviously we're doing the post-action report to see whether we can improve those applications for the next round and see if we're more successful. But right now, we had hoped that a lot of the money in the capital budget was going to leverage bigger projects. The individual projects at town meeting approved on the merits were worthy, but the hope was to stretch the money a little bit more, and that's not occurring. And then we have one area that I just want to make you aware of, because I anticipate there'll be sort of a lively conversation about this. Last year, we asked for money for public safety radio, and the operative assumption was that because the portable radios carried by the police department were coming to the end of their useful life, and they are the majority of our subscribers, we would take that opportunity to get everyone the same portable and onto a frequency so that the radio may not all be tuned, it can't be tuned to the same channel, but anybody with that one radio could change channels and talk to any other employee of the town, whether it's fire and highway and police, to coordinate response to any number of different kind of incidents. That level of interoperability is what we're hoping for. And we're hoping for to do it on the cheap, frankly, through the portables and the mobiles in the cars. And that budget number is what number we went to town meeting and asked for and won approval for. $175,000, or roughly about that much. But we didn't spend a dime of it. We were going to do a necessary investigation into the history of the town's public safety radio system and what new technologies making available and what other entities are doing. And after quite a bit of research by a whole team of people, the public safety chiefs, John Furno, myself, other people who are assigned, our experts in the police department on radio, so Brandon and Mark, and we looked into the history of the town. The last time Chief Foley upgraded the radios in the police department, it was his hope that by switching to UHF that he would get a better product, that he was going to get better saturation. And when they actually rolled the system out, that was not the case. UHF failed in ways that VHF didn't. So what we ended up with, because the equipment purchase had already been made, what the town ended up with, I wasn't here, was basically UHF and VHF running simultaneously with one central broadcast point, the top of the water tower, the highest point in town, getting you the lion's share of your coverage. And therein lies the problem. So we talk about people not being able to talk to each other, not being able to, because they can't get back to the base station. They're not being heard because it's not being picked up. And if they go beyond the range of the mobile radio on their cruiser, they're not getting picked up. That's fundamentally ended up being the issue. We've always been skeptical. There are a couple of vendors out there that will try to sell you on the whiz-bang system and present it to you as the only solution possible. I won't mention names, but they have a statewide contract, and it's so easy to fall into this trap. Oh, look, the state took care of us and got us a good contract, so we'll just jump into it, and now the price tag's $800,000, right, or $1 million. Eventually we assigned this to Lieutenant Coyne because he was on light duty, and it was appropriate to have Lieutenant Coyne at the fire department, who has an emergency management degree and background, pursue it at some greater level of detail. There was another vendor that's a statewide contract with a very different reputation. Not a Motorola pushing client, and a lot of experience in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, specifically on the police side. Microwave still is not cheap, but if you simulcast over 3 locations and they're voting to each other, the coverage for the town, it's going to be hard to pick this up on camera, but the red area is ideal. And so that's their coverage projection. You'd have still down here with all the trees and all the backwoods and the rolling terrain, you're still going to have difficulty. But if we simulcast from a tower in Webster, which is right on the line, from the water tank, and from the high school, we've gone all the way across the town, and now that's going to be a live wire. I'm sure in Capitol that discussion will be engaged as to whether or not that's a cost-effective solution for the long run for the town for public safety communications. My perspective is this: you can add all the people you want to in public safety. If they can't talk to each other, they're not going to be an effective response. So push comes to shove, their equipment has to work. Radio has to work, the cruiser has to work, the equipment that are on the fire engine has to work, the ambulance, same thing. And then when your force multiplier at that point is in place, and now you're just adding people to it. So if you're looking for a long-term planning for public safety in the town of Douglas, if we can swing radio and get it done, then you have the conversation about staffing and appropriate levels in 4 or 5 years from now. They'll have the tools to be able to build out like that. The price tag is still high. It's higher than the 175. We haven't spent any of the 175. So I will be working with Gene to sharpen our pencils to see, do we have capital accounts with, the activity is closed out, but there's still money left there. Can it all be transferred at town meeting? Can we cobble together a way to defray the cost of this, maybe phase in the program? But at some point, you will do the 3 simulcast microwave, and that'll be.
Could we use any of the Wallem Lake money for that?
You could. Absolutely could leverage.
We could ever get an accounting on what's actually there?
Yeah, but we did. Eventually, they finally came clean on that. It was what we thought it was.
Yeah.
So after last year, it was around $36,000, $37,000. So I think we can come together with a strategy that doesn't really require such a big demand on free cash, that we would be able to soften that blow considerably and still get a top-rated system where everybody can talk to each other. And if we have one standard issue, which over time will help us when we have new staff come on and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to make sure this is a public safety board that's very interested in public safety, and let you know that's where we are with that project. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Is that 800? Just one question. Is that 800 trunks or no? What?
So 800 trunks. So we spent a lot of time talking to the state police.
Yep.
Very honest opinions were shared.
Yes.
From their side.
Yeah.
I guess the state's divided east-west. What the east is doing is not the same as what the west is doing. Surprise, surprise. They're investing massive amounts in 800 Spectrum and the equipment associated with it. Biggest downfall seems to be this. by the time you get out here, it's a really big project. We would need, so instead of doing 3, we would have to do 5 locations. So these are the radio experts who put this consulting plan together, which they did gratis, which I appreciate. Yeah, you would need 5 locations in Douglas, so it means you'd have to build 2 of them at $300,000 a piece, and that's where the state police are running into trouble. They don't have the tower backbone to carry all this 800 traffic. And then there is still that remaining concern that even though the technology is improved, in confined spaces, it's still not a winner. And about the only time we worry about our folks is when they're in confined spaces, school buildings, or municipal buildings, or people's homes. So it doesn't really get us to where we need to go, and it's not going to save us any money.
I almost wonder if it's one of those things that maybe Fatman and McKenna might be able to come up with some state funding to help us on that, too.
It is a one-time, and it's a one-time, and it frees up some operational money. So we spend an awful lot of money renting the mother of all copper wires, over which public safety traffic is carried. And Verizon has filed the tariff saying they will no longer maintain those wires. So there is a point at which it's all going to stop. We're all going to have to figure out what we're doing, either 5G or 800 megahertz or microwave simulcast. And this would take us out, I don't know what we're spending on. That line is how much per month? It's like $300, $400 a month just to rent the Verizon the public safety cable.
Oh, I don't know.
But our space on it's expensive. That would come back into the budget and would defray the cost of renting space in the tower in Webster.
It'd pretty much be a wash.
It's a wash.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any old business? No. Do we have any new business? Again, seeing is none. Mr. Bonin, would you like to grace us with one of your eloquent motions?
I'll be glad to. I'll make a motion that we move into executive session for the purpose of interest in real property, then to leave executive session for the purpose of adjournment.
I would second that well-stated motion.
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Mike Hughes, aye.
Bone and I.
Kevin Morris, aye.
Al Davis, aye.
Dave Cortez, aye.